Tri-City Sports Now, final segment. Marky Billson here with you. And want to thank Jack Stallard for appearing. Want to also thank Vito Stellino. We'll have Vito on next week, talk a little bit about the season. Tomorrow, I guess the Titans, you heard the sports updates from Matt Pauley. They'll be playing the Eagles in Philly as the preseason begins. And we can only hope that it's one of the final preseasons. I know that Vito has not been like me with we got to have the 18-game schedule. I mean, you want to know, they've talked about that idea, and I don't think it'll happen, but 18-game schedule, but players can only play 16 games, so to save their bodies. I may be the only one that likes that. I think it'll present a strategic element. I don't think it'll happen, but just the idea of, well, let's see, we're playing the Arizona Cardinals today, yeah, I tell you what, let's put a backup quarterback in there, and he'll play the game, because they're playing Arizona. They were 3-13 last year. I mean, you'll have decisions that have to be made like, or are you going to, play your starter and then hope that you clinch by the end of the year, and then you play the second stringers, which is basically what happens now. I mean, remember when the Saints and the Colts 10 years ago were undefeated? It looked like we could have had the greatest Super Bowl, 16-0 versus 16-0, and then the coach just said, you know what, let's just hold back here. Yeah, let's just, no. Let's put out Curtis Painter. I don't want Peyton Manning getting hurt end of the year. Was there ever a bigger drop-off in talent from Peyton Manning to Curtis Painter? I actually handcuffed on my fantasy team Peyton Manning and Curtis Painter. You got to do that with running backs. I said, you know what? Do it with quarterbacks. Because, they always, it's the system and all that. And, I'll bet you that the backup of the Colts, Manning went down, that the system, the OC, the talent around it, I'll bet the backup could put up some nice numbers. If it came to that. This is why in fantasy football, handcuffing quarterbacks is not considered to be the way to go oftentimes. Anyway, there was a huge, that's why when Manning couldn't play that one year, it's an injured year. The Colts, they went 2-14 overnight with Painter trying to, Kerry Collins, actually, they signed him. Went 0-4 with them, I believe. It was, there was a huge drop-off right there. You suddenly understood why Peyton Manning was so special. Marky Billson here, Tri-City Sports Now. But, yeah, we'll talk to Vito. We'll talk to Jack later on, I think, as well. Jack Stallard from Longview, Texas, native of Irwin. Or at least he went to high school here. And does that make me a native of Shippensburg, Pennsylvania? I went to 9th grade there. We're going to have our 30th reunion. They invite me. I didn't graduate there. I graduated University I. University I didn't have a 30th year anniversary. They're going to have one at U8, at Shippensburg. I'm going to go to that. So we've got that. Number 2 that I wanted to tell you about is the future guests. Friday, Jerry Bonkowski won't be able to join us, but I will be having Tony Page, who is a sports talk show host from New York City. I mentioned this before. A big boxing guy. First time he was ever in Tennessee. It was to call the fights on ESPN2 from the old boxing arena by Bristol Motor Speedway. That doesn't exist anymore. And I actually was covering this for this station. And actually got to meet Tony Page. And the thrill of my life was then the next week where I'd fallen asleep listening to WFAN. And suddenly was awoken in a sound sleep when I heard Tony Page talk about me and the forerunner to this show, and all that in the middle of the night in New York City. And boy, did I think that I had arrived. But he's retiring, and boxing is back in the news with the fatalities that have gone on. And so let's talk about this, with Tony Page. He'll be my 1 o'clock Friday guest. And then at 1:30, of course, on Friday, Josh Brown, Nakahoma Nation. So, we've got all of that. I should mention yesterday, if you missed it, unfortunately for local fans, Daniel Norris returned to his losing ways as the White Sox, no great shakes either, defeated the Detroit Tigers 5-3. Now, Norris didn't get shelled and having his record fall to 3-9. He went into the sixth inning, 5 2/3 innings, allowed 4 runs, all of them earned. His ERA 4.76, which I guess in today's baseball is somewhat respectable. Interesting though take. Remember, we've had Daniel Norris on, and I got to tell you this. I've reached out to some ball players. And remember last year when we reached out to some minor leaguers trying to make it, and the interviews really didn't go that well. And we had all kinds of cancellations, and this is one of the things that I think is holding back baseball when we see, attendance here for White Sox Tigers. Actually, I thought, all things considered, pretty good there in Detroit. I mean, the team has lost 77 ball games this year, and it's just barely, in fact, they've only played 109, so they're 32 and 77. Or how would you like this? They are now in their last, give me a minute here to think of this, 95 games, 24 and 71. And that's so good. And Norris's 3-9 record is indicative of that. This isn't Steve Carlton in 1972. But the attendance was 18,455. Now, I'm guaranteeing you that's the American League have always done a ticket sold. How many do you think were actually in a ballpark? We don't have the numbers there, but I'm going to guess fewer. And I mention all of this because, when you think of, okay, you should have fewer fans right there. When you're not giving back, when you're not coming on the sports talk shows for the interviews, when you're ducking the media, or when you're just, I got one guy we were supposed to be set up last year, and I swear I got him out of bed. And I'm like, how am I going to carry this for 15 minutes? I maybe should have hung up on him. I don't, you'd give the fans that lack of respect. We had, times where we set up an interview and at the last minute, he can't do it. And that has happened more times in minor league baseball than I care to remember. But I will say this, Daniel Norris has always, he's been accessible to this show. And struggling a bit, but we are very appreciative of that. Very appreciative. So I, have, joked, hey, you want to buy a house? Bet against the Detroit Tigers. All right. Kind of the way it's been going when their record is 32 and 77, worst in baseball. Norris, these last 2 starts before this were actually halfway decent. This time, not the best, but nevertheless, it wasn't, he didn't get shelled, if you will. 3-9. Interesting, I was talking on social media, our friend Julio Cruz, there's a name drop right there. He broadcast the Mariners games, used to be their second baseman, if you can recall, in a previous generation. And in a previous generation, he also was the manager of the year of the Appalachian League in 1997 for the Pulaski Rangers. Now Yankees, but then they were the Rangers. And they had the best record in the league back in 97. He was their manager. He let the players play. And I asked him because Norris went up against the Mariners last Friday. What were your impressions? And he really didn't have any. Now, one of the things that knocks against Norris is that he's been a slow worker. A couple of years ago, he was actually timed as the slowest worker in all of baseball. And Julio Cruz had a very interesting thing to say about that. And I was like, that makes it so tough on your defense. When you're waiting around, when it's, you throw every 15 seconds, you can stay sharp. When it's 25, that makes it more difficult. And Cruz was a pretty good defensive second baseman. So there's just another answer right there to make to speed up the ballgame, but not by these stupid rule changes like intentional walks. Just send them down to first or whatever. No, not because of that. In fact, I still am like, what are they doing? Wait, I thought my scorecard said that, he's at first. What's happening? You still have that with the, just send them to first. That's not how you speed up a game. you go in and you start preaching fundamentals. It's kind of interesting. A baseball commissioner and say, you know what, I want you to start, get ball, see sign, throw ball pitchers. Let's have some fast working here. It'll be to your benefit. That message is what will speed up baseball. By the way, Braves even their series up with the Minnesota Twins. There was some talk about, oh my goodness, Mike Foltynewicz is out there and he's facing the team that hits the most home runs in baseball. Well, he did allow a couple of dingers, but ultimately won his third game against 5 losses. First game up from the farm. He was sent back down there because he's only 2-5 and his ERA was over 6. But now he's 3-5. His ERA is still over 6 at 6.26. But 5 1/3, 3 runs allowed, all of them earned, and 7 strikeouts for Foltynewicz. So, there's been worse pitching. And you know what? There have been, though, little times where there have been worse hitting. Take a listen. We'll finish out the show this way.
McCann swung on, hit toward right center field. That's going to be a gapper. That's going to clear the bases. Freeman scores. On his way to the plate is Donaldson. He will score. McCann with a big turn will stop and go back to first with a single off the right center field wall. He's got 2 RBIs. And the Braves are now on top 11-0 with a 6-run inning.
Single off the wall. You wonder what what it was like there. And you heard Don Sutton. This was not two-fisted play-by-play. It was 11-0 at the time, and you heard what that was about. But yeah, the Braves do beat the Twins. They'll play their rubber game of the series today up in Minnesota. And what can you say? The lead remains like 6 games, I believe, right now over the Nationals. And with the Phillies just barely holding on to Mets and the Cardinals breathing down their neck for the final wild card in the National League. But the Braves defeat the Twins, and it was kind of clear sailing for Foltynewicz. All right, Tri-City Sports Now. Colin Cowherd is next.
20 WE